Viewers are invited to drop their location and local time in the comments because really who doesn't want to know if someone in Iceland is watching this while it's still daylight at midnight? Now picture a man on his ranch, woken not by roosters, not by coyotes, but by the diesel snarl of bulldozers at 6:30 in the morning. He jolts from bed in boxer shorts and a shirt so faded it could pass for a museum artifact rushing to the window. What he sees makes his stomach plummet like a roller coaster with a broken brake, a bulldozer crunching through his grandfather's hand-cut oak fence. That fence wasn't just wood and wire. Built in 1875, it had weathered storms, prairie fires, and cattle drives. Each generation of Hayes men had mended it like monks illuminating manuscripts. Historians still argue whether cowboys spent more time riding cattle or fixing fences, but here was proof that the fence endured longer than most marriages. And now one guy in a cab with air conditioning was erasing it like bad chalk off a board. He storms outside barefoot gravel, biting at his feet, hollering, "Stop with enough rage to scare buzzards off a carcass." The operator just shrugs and points toward a woman by a gleaming white pickup. She's Jillian Harper, mid-40s, power suit, blacker than a crow at midnight, clipboard clutched like a holy relic. She doesn't even flinch when the man charges up panting like he's run a marathon without the medal. She smiles not the warm kind, but the shark smile that says, "I already won." "This is a legally approved easement," she announces, voice cold enough to frost glass in August. "You should thank me. This road will increase your property value." That's like thanking a thief for smashing your window because now you've got better ventilation. She waves papers at him like a teacher scolding a kid, and before he can argue, he's already on the phone with 911. When police arrive, they don't cuff Jillian or halt the bulldozers. Instead, they ask him to prove he owns his own land, the same land his family has held since before Texas joined the Union. Jillian flashes her document, and the officers nod as if they're reading sacred scripture. "Looks legitimate to me," one says, handing it back like it's overdue homework. The man wants to scream about heritage, about his ancestor who carved a ranch out of prairie grass with grit and calluses, but their eyes say it all, they've chosen sides. By sunset, he's still staring at the ruins of that fence when a delivery truck drops a lawsuit in his hands. The HOA now demands $25,000 for blocking their easement. Court costs, daily fines, permanent orders. It's legal quicksand. He realizes this fight could bankrupt him faster than a poker game with marked cards. Somewhere his grandfather's ghost is probably muttering, "Told you never to trust folks with clipboards." Finding a lawyer in a small Texas town who's willing to battle an HOA is about as easy as finding a snow cone in the Sahara. Divorce lawyers plenty. Car accident specialists. Take your pick. But property disputes against a well-funded association. Suddenly every line goes dead. That's when a friend whispers a name, William Davis. 50 years old, hair peppered with courtroom dust and a past scar from his own HOA nightmare. Once upon a time, they tried to shut down his backyard workshop. He fought, he won, and he never forgot. William's office looks like it belongs in a sitcom. Towers of law books that lean like Pisa, a coffee pot older than disco, and folders that seem to multiply when no one's looking. Yet behind that clutter, his eyes spark. "This isn't just your ranch," he tells the man, leaning back like an old sheriff before a duel. "This is about every family they've bulldozed. Your fight is my fight." He studies Jillian's easement papers, frowning the way a detective frowns when the suspect slips. "Strange seal," he mutters. "Too perfect for 1985. And why would your grandfather sign this 2 years after he died?" That discovery drops like a thunderclap. The HOA's shining document is less legal parchment, more cheap forgery. Historians still argue whether medieval scribes made more mistakes by accident or design, but this one screams design, an intentional trick meant to fool courts and crush families. Digging deeper, they find a clause buried like treasure on page 3. Grantor maintains right to revoke easement with 30 days' notice. If real, it meant the whole thing could have been canceled with a single letter. The man's heart pounds had his grandfather tried. Meanwhile, Jillian unleashes daily violation notices like junk mail from hell. $500 a day, each one another nail in the coffin. Neighbors who once shared BBQ ribs now avert their eyes at the grocery store. Fear spreads quicker than wildfire. Yet William pushes forward. He hires Dr. Sarah Kim, a forensic handwriting expert who spreads documents across the desk like a poker player revealing aces. Her verdict: forgery. The signature's a traced copy, smooth where it should wobble, artificial where it should flow. The real gut punch comes when they find the pattern repeating other families, other ranches all signed away by ghosts long dead. Elena Rodriguez, 72, tells her story in a trembling voice over chipped mugs of coffee. She thought she signed something for the good of the community. Instead, her garden was bulldozed for a road. They even fined her when she tried to replant peppers for her grandchildren. Listening to her, the man wants to punch walls. He searches his attic, dust rising like ghosts. Among tax forms and recipe cards, he finds his grandfather's will written in 1982. This land shall never be subject to easements without unanimous consent of all heirs. Never filed, never processed, yet still valid. His hands shake reading those words. Maybe his grandfather foresaw this war. Maybe he left the weapon they needed. But deep down he senses this is only the beginning, because when you find one crack in a dam, you can bet the flood's already on its way. The courthouse smells of old wood polish and tension. Sterling and Associates, a Dallas firm so slick their shoes squeak differently, arrives armed with binders and fake emergency reports. Their silver-haired general, Marcus Sterling, paints the rancher as a selfish extremist, holding back ambulances and school buses. Charts are waved, actors pose as concerned citizens, and even the judge seems swayed. Historians still argue whether ancient lawyers or modern ones were better at lying with a straight face, but Sterling makes a strong case for the modern camp. William, calm as a chess master, begins dismantling it all. He rolls out real county maps, authentic emergency service logs, and testimony from the fire chief himself, who admits no one ever needed that road. 2 other routes are faster. Their entire safety argument, smoke and mirrors. You can almost hear the courtroom air shift as facts replace theater. Then Jillian takes the stand wearing her best politician smile. I gain nothing, she says, voice dripping with sincerity. I serve only the community. It lasts about 12 seconds. William produces bank records, $280,000 in consulting fees plus ownership in the development company. Her face cracks like an egg under a boot. By the time federal agents stride into the room with warrants, Jillian's empire of forged documents collapses. She tries blaming rogue board members and even Commissioner Morrison, but prosecutors already have the money trail mapped straighter than a county road survey. The fallout is swift. Jillian pleads guilty to fraud, laundering, and running an organized crime scheme, sentenced to 4 years in federal prison and restitution of $600,000. Morrison gets 2 years and a lifetime ban from public office. The HOA board is dismantled under federal supervision. Fraudulent easements are voided. Elena gets her garden back, and Lanier Development crashes into bankruptcy. Contractors replant oak saplings where bulldozers had scarred the ranch using traditional fence techniques that echo back to 1875. Watching history repair itself is like watching an old film reel spliced together at last. 6 months later, the rancher stands at sunset, hearing his grandfather's voice in the wind. You did good, boy. Elena hosts a harvest celebration, kids running between rows of tomatoes. With court-awarded damages, the rancher funds a legal defense group for rural families targeted by HOA scams. No one should face bulldozers alone. The sweetest irony, Jillian's foreclosed luxury house is bought with her own restitution money, then donated to veterans' housing. It's the kind of poetic justice Shakespeare might have scribbled if he'd ever dealt with suburban HOAs. And then the pace slows. The camera of memory drifts back across the ranch at dusk. The oak fence stands again, each post steady, each wire taut against the horizon. Coyotes call in the distance, but the land itself feels calmer, as if the soil knows it's safe. He breathes in the smell of dust, and mesquite lets the tension drain. The fight nearly broke him, yet the legacy is secure, the ancestors honored. And when the next storm comes, the ranch will stand as it always has, rooted in history and held by hands that refuse to let go. So settle in wherever you're listening. Let the imagery fade like embers in a campfire. Imagine oak leaves whispering, children laughing, and gardens restored, and a horizon that holds more promise than fear. Justice is never easy, but sometimes it arrives just in time, steady as dawn. Sleep comes easier when you know a fence can be rebuilt and a legacy can rise again.